Now I'm going to refresh to clear out our styles, and let's look at another approach, which is using continuous floats. So that is floating this element to the left and then floating this element to the left as well. And when you do that, they end up cascading across the page. So let's give that a try. I'm going to add the float back to this element. We'll do float left, and then let's do the same thing for our snippet content div, and we'll set this to float left. So notice how we're kind of back to where we started. We have our thumbnail on the top and our content below it. So the reason why this is happening is that with floats, they'll continue across the page until they run out of space, and then they'll bump to the next line. In this case, our content is stretching all the way across, so it's bumping down to the next line because there's not enough room for it up here. We can change that by setting the width of this to something smaller than the width of the space left in the browser. So let's set the width here to 200 pixels. Okay, so when that happened, we now get these two next to each other. Now let's figure out how wide it actually should be. I'm going to go to Photoshop and we'll do a quick measurement of the space here of the content. So it looks like it should be about 372 pixels. So I'll go back to our browser and let's change the width here to 372 pixels. Okay, now by default, there's no space being added between the floats, but margins are respected between two floated elements. Now we saw earlier that it's not respected between a floated element and a not floated element, but since they're both being floated, we could add some margin here. Let's add margin left, maybe 20 pixels or so. Okay, not bad. So floats assume that the next content or the next elements are going to flow around it. So that's why we're seeing this content bumped right up next to this content, whereas before it was on its own line. Now if you need a break between some floats and the next elements, then you have to clear the float, and the way that you do that is by selecting the element that comes next. So in this case, let's select the next section, and then we're going to give it the property of clear, and in this case, we can do clear left because the float is on its left. And when we did that, you see it gets bumped down to another line. Now in our case, I'm going to remove that clear here. Now in our case, we'll want to continue floating items. So if we continued on to float this thumbnail in the next section to the left, we'll do float left. You can see it bumps it up next to the previously floated element. And then we can do the same thing for the next content. So if we select the next snippet content, we can set it to float left as well, but we'll also need to change the size. So let's set the width to 372 pixels, and we'll give it a margin left of 20 pixels. Now we have both of these aligned with each other, but we still need to clear the float on the next section here. So if we scroll down in our content down here, we can go to the next section, which is a stacked hero section, and let's set the clear to left. And you saw the contact drop down, and if we scroll down, we can see it right here.